are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Cowboys. Locked On Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Today, we're going to be talking about the NFL playoffs, Sean Payton, some coaching changes maybe. But Landon, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well. I mean, we'll get into it, but that Chiefs-Bills game was maybe the best football game I think I've ever seen. It was incredible to watch.
Let's start with that. Let's start with that
let's
game
let's do
that game. It was awesome, and I know this is a Cowboys-related podcast, but if you're just an NFL fan, holy cow, that game was a lot of fun. Who were you rooting for?
I think at the end I was rooting for the Bills because it was so incredible to see what they were able to do and on the road against Kansas City. And at that point, it was really just a thing of the math for me was Josh Allen doesn't have a Super Bowl yet. And Mahomes does. And I think that, I just kind of wanted to see them be able to pull this out. I like the way that they do things. I like the way that their offense runs. So I was kind of pulling for them. But frankly, I mean, short of being a fan of one of those two teams, I don't know how you could be upset with the way that game played out.
Yeah, I wasn't upset with the way the game turned out. It was just I feel bad for Buffalo fans.
Sure.
Right? Like this was really their chance to go win a Super Bowl. Josh Allen played the game of his life, and they still came up a little bit short. It's got to be so frustrating to be like, we have this super duper star quarterback, and it's still not good enough, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, those two teams are so good. It kind of felt like that was a Super Bowl last night in some ways, right?
It felt like, again, you may have been a little bit too young to actually be aware of this, but it felt like when the Cowboys were playing the 49ers in like the early 90s, it's like when we used to go into those games, Cowboys fans and 49ers fans used to talk all the time about how this is the actual Super Bowl. I mean, whoever wins this game is probably going to run through whoever actually gets into the Super Bowl. And I kind of feel like this might be the case here, except those were conference games. This is a divisional game. It just felt like those were the two best teams that we saw all week, and it wasn't even close. And frankly, we'll get into the rest of the games, but the rest of the games, there was lots of people fumbling, and I mean that literally and figuratively, fumbling their way into victories, and kind of just the other team maybe shooting themselves in the foot or less, But for this game, it felt like two. Teams that were in kind of almost a tier above the rest of the teams in the playoffs, just shooting it out. I mean, what was it, like 25 points in the last 2 minutes of the
Something
game?
crazy like that. Yeah.
It was absolutely absurd. Like the end of that game is seriously unlike anything I think I've ever seen before.
The only game that I can compare it to was a few years ago, the 49ers Saints game. They had a bunch of scores late, and that might have been a divisional round game as well. But that was with Alex Smith and Drew Brees, where it was just back and forth like that. But absolutely incredible. I want to talk about the NFC side of things because I think there's some important takeaways kind of going forward from that game. But before we do that, let me just tell you guys about Built Bar. It's the new year, so that means New Year's resolutions. If yours is about getting fit or eating healthier, make sure you include Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes just like a candy bar, or maybe even better than a candy bar. You're going to want to eat healthy. Built Bar is going to help you do that. Most Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate with 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. There's so many great flavors too. Peanut butter brownie, raspberry, cookies and cream, salted caramel, mint brownie, and many, many more. Go to built.com and use promo code LOCK15 and you'll get 15% off your next order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, let's go to the Packer 49er game. As you watch that game, did you feel better or worse about the Cowboys' outcome against the 49ers a week ago?
Better. Look, the 49ers able to walk into Green Bay and do what they did to that offense. And really, frankly, I just feel better about the fact that the Cowboys were the only team to kind of pissed down their leg when they came down to the playoff time. I mean, frankly, like I remember at some point before all the playoffs actually started, the seeding and everything had been announced. I had told somebody, man, I just hope that the Cowboys play like the Packers and the Buccaneers do in the playoffs. This is not what I meant, guys. Like, I didn't mean for all three teams to play poorly at home in key moments, but watching that game and just watching Green Bay's ineptitude on offense, and then frankly, just shocking special teams miscues. It was really eye-opening that all it takes is getting into the tournament and being hot. Like, frankly, the Green Bay Packers were the team that we mentioned, right? The one team that we felt like had a serious, real home field advantage, especially in the NFC side, to even speak of. The 49ers marched in there and punched the Packers in the mouth. And they didn't get up and respond in any kind of real way. And despite all the talk all week about trying to force it to your best player, I think that's ultimately what really made the Packers struggle. The fact that they were trying to force it to Adams, and then when they needed to come off of it, he wasn't looking at times when he needed to Cobb or Lazard, and it really ultimately cost him.
I don't know if you saw the dots from the NFL Next Gen stats, but on the very last throw that Adams had, or excuse me, that Rodgers had, he threw to Adams in double coverage, and that wasn't the design of the play. And Matt LaFleur talked about it. The design was to send Adams down the seam, and then Alan Lazard would come up and in the middle, and he did. He was wide open. But Rodgers went to his blankie, right? Mm-hmm. And Devontae Adams, and he played hero ball. And he this is what we were afraid of with the Cowboys. If you just force the ball to one receiver over and over and over again, it could be a problem. So many takeaways from that game.
Where do you begin? Like, the game itself, the meaning, the what the Packers are looking towards. Where's Aaron Rodgers going to go? Like,
I think it starts with this. Coaching makes such a huge difference, and that's what I feel like. I like Mike McCarthy. Like, I've been pretty vocal about that, but I think there's a difference between like him and Kyle Shanahan, right? Because Kyle Shanahan went to Green Bay in Lambeau and devised an offensive game plan around a quarterback who completed, I believe, one pass in the first half against the Packers and won the game. And this isn't the only time that he's done that against Green Bay in the playoffs, right? They had a game where he threw 8 passes and they beat the Packers. I just wish the Cowboys had that type of coaching advantage in some of these big games.
Yeah. I mean, look, if you want to talk about my main takeaway from this weekend, is that the Cowboys either need to greatly upgrade their personnel or greatly upgrade their coaching. Because they're on the tier beneath these folks. I mean, there were times when we saw them play at a level that could have competed with these guys, but I mean that they never. I mean, they consciously made choices to play a more conservative game, and look at how all these other teams played in these games. Like, they went for it completely. I mean, the Bills and the Kansas City game was like, watching two heavyweights just constantly throw haymakers at each other. I just feel like watching this, it made you feel like the team that we need to be more aggressive attacking down the field. Like, they need to score points in chunks like that, like they have been. I mean, that's the future of football here, is I think the defense is crazy important. And I think that showed in the Packers and 49ers game, and that there are multiple ways to win this. But ultimately, you either need an incredible life-altering quarterback or an incredible scheming offensive mind who can get your players in position to score a bunch of points, or at least control the ball, if you want to get to this level and beyond in the NFL playoffs.
And I would also say, not only just for the Cowboys, but just for teams around the league, look at the 4 head coaches left. Kyle Shanahan, you've got Sean McVay, Zach Taylor, and Andy Reid. I mean, they're all 4 offensive minds. I know Andy Reid doesn't call every play in Kansas City, but all 4 of these guys are guys that are calling plays and designing their own offense. And I think it's what's going to make these teams incredibly consistent going forward, right? I mean, the 49ers have a chance to be in the second Super Bowl in the last 3 years with Jimmy Garoppolo as their quarterback, right? I mean, the Chiefs have been to the AFC Championship game 4 times in a row. The Rams have a chance to be in their second Super Bowl since 2018 with Jared Goff, with 2 different quarterbacks, right? Matt Stafford and Jared Goff. You have to have one of those guys if you want to have a chance, I feel like, in the NFL.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you can believe in Kellen Moore. You can believe that he can develop into one of these guys. I think that there certainly is the chance of possibility of that. I mean, he's still a young coach, but at this point, like, you don't feel like the Cowboys have the coaching firepower that some of these other teams have.
Well, and that's why I'm nervous about like the Giants if they hire Brian Dable, because they might have one of those guys, right? They might not have the quarterback yet, but they might have one of these guys that's just one of the top 5 or 6 offensive play callers in the league, and that's really, really hard to find.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that the one thing the Giants have been able to do is find some offensive talent here and there, but they've never been able to deploy it. And I don't trust Daniel Jones as far as he can throw it, but I think that there's a way that you could convince yourself that Brian Dable could go into a situation like that and at least get something out of Daniel Jones. Because they have very similar playing styles, not similar talent as what they have with the Bills.
The other takeaway that I had is just Dallas needs more speed, man, because you watch like that Kansas City Buffalo game and it's like a track meet, right? Like they can't find fast enough guys to get on the field. Like the Chiefs have Jerick McKinnon at running back who runs a 4.35, and he might be like the 4th fastest player on that offense.
Well,
right?
I mean, I think the big thing I'm taking away from these games now is that not only are we accepting more traits types players, we should be focusing on traits players.
Yeah. Because
the truth of the matter is that this has shifted in a way that's hard to describe in the last 10 years in the draft community. I mean, I'm sure you felt it too, that like the guys that many teams wouldn't even I mean, frankly, you can say what you want about Jared Allen. Like Jared Allen me was Josh Allen. I'm sorry. Yeah. Jared, well, you say what you want about Jared Allen either.
Yeah, he's a good player.
Josh Allen is one of those guys that like came into the league as just strictly a tools player. Strictly as a guy that had height, weight, speed, and a strong arm, was not incredibly accurate at Wyoming, didn't kind of meet a lot of the metrics you want. And you could throw other players in there too, like Tyreek Hill and I mean Micah Parsons, and like
Herbert,
a whole tons of guys like that. It just feels like if you need these life-altering kind of play, game-altering type players in this game, you're not getting them from the safe picks anymore. The guys that you necessarily thought that were going to be, he did it in college, he did it here, he's going to just keep on that incline. It seems to me that the guys who are truly dominating the league right now are the guys that have the elite traits that you're able to teach how to do the job well, and then kind of just unleash them on NFL teams. That's something that is going to be something that I'm going to carry over into my evals this year, especially is not kind of shying away from the traitsy type players as much anymore, and being willing to kind of take a risk on those guys.
I mean, athleticism matters, right? We always say that athleticism matters in athletics. And you look at the quarterbacks yesterday, both those guys were the leading rushers for their teams in the Buffalo, Kansas City game. You've got guys that are running 4.3, like McCool Hardman. McCool Hardman had like 500 career receiving yards at Georgia, and he makes a bunch of big plays in this game. Gabriel Davis had 200 yards and 4 touchdowns. The last player to do that in a playoff game was Jerry Rice. Like, he's a freak athlete. Like, you just got to find those guys. And listen, it worked out for Dallas this year. They took a 99.9 percentile athlete at linebacker who, was still kind of learning the linebacker spot, maybe didn't have great instincts, but when you have that type of athleticism, it almost doesn't matter. You can kind of learn the stuff. So I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, to me, that's the big takeaway moving forward into the offseason there. And then, obviously the other big takeaway here is, how does this change the landscape of the NFC? I mean, you had the number 1 and number 2 seed get eliminated, both with veteran quarterbacks. One or both or none, I guess, may potentially consider retirement or be moving on from the team that they're currently on. I mean, that's something that Cowboys fans have to be eyeballing and saying, well, what is the NFC going to look like in the next 3 or 4 years if these two guys aren't in there and it's basically leaving it wide open? As a note, I'll just throw in, it would be shocking to me if Rodgers decided to stay in the league and then got traded to an AFC team, right? Because it's like, why would he? And because that's what all the rumors are, right?
Well,
like talking about Denver. But it's like,
but
how can he go
I
to the
agree with
AFC?
you. I agree with you.
Yeah.
But is Green Bay going to trade him to an NFC team? Like, they're not going to trade him inside the division, right? Is there let's just go division by division. Is there an NFC East team that makes sense? Like, do you want to go to Washington? Do you want to go to New York? Do you want to go to
Philadelphia?
Philly?
Makes some sense. I hate to say it, but it
Okay,
makes some
and
sense.
they've got the draft capital.
Yeah.
An AFC South team, probably not, right? I don't think he's going to the Bucks. The Saints don't have the cap space or the picks.
The
Panthers
Niners
don't have the cap space or the picks. Do the West teams all have their quarterbacks, right?
But
I mean,
49ers?
Trey Lance in San Francisco, Kyler Murray in Arizona, Stafford with the Rams, and who's the other one I'm forgetting? Oh, then Russell Wilson with the Seahawks. So
I'm telling you, I wouldn't rule out the 49ers. I understand that they already drafted a quarterback really high, but I just
don't think the Packers could make that trade, right?
Probably not. Right. I guess that's probably true, especially with the way that the state of the LaFleur-Shanahan relationship is, from what we understand currently. I can't imagine that happens, right?
Yeah.
Especially since that's what the argument was about, wasn't it? Wasn't the argument between them about the fact that Shanahan was trying to poach Rodgers from LaFleur?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think
I agree with
right.
you. I think it would only make sense for Rodgers to stay in the NFC, considering the quarterbacks in the conference are just so much lesser. But man, I don't think there's a lot of great landing spots, right? I mean, unless you want to go play in Philadelphia. I almost can't see how Rodgers stays with the Packers this year because their cap situation is atrocious. They're $40 million over the cap without Devontae Adams, and they've got a bunch of free agents. What's the benefit of coming back to that team? I don't.
Rodgers likes the drama, the hype. Like, he likes the spotlight and all. What he'll probably do is retire. And then wait a year for his contract to or wait however long it takes for the Green Bay to either release his rights, or be more willing to trade him to a team that he wants, and then just go play where he wants to play in 2023. I just these guys have incredible amounts of leverage, and especially with how much money they're on their caps. Green Bay eventually may just want to be rid of the number off their cap and be willing to get rid of it if he's not going to play for them.
Last question before we move on. I was watching that game, the Buffalo game last night, the Buffalo Chiefs game, and wondering, can Dak Prescott play to the level of these two quarterbacks? Do they have a quarterback that can play at this level? And I don't know. I don't know how I feel, honestly. Do you think he can get to that super duper elite level where he can go toe to toe with Patrick Mahomes?
I don't think that Dak is as talented as Patrick Mahomes or
Josh Allen.
I keep wanting to say Jared Allen. I don't think as individual players, I think those two guys are as talented as anybody in the league. But I do think that Dak can play with those guys with the right group of folks around him. I do think that the Cowboys can produce an offense that can play with those offenses. Maybe not with the distribution onto the quarterback is the same way. But I do think that they can play a brand of football that can keep up scoring wise with those teams. They just, they certainly didn't show it later in the season, but I think that we've seen a willingness to play that way. I honestly, I think a lot of it is just willingness, a willingness to play aggressively and just attack a little bit more. And I think that's I'm gonna say it. The big thing in the Kansas City Chiefs and Bills game, honestly, the big thing and why that game was so great. The refs didn't get in the way. They weren't just constantly throwing flags. They weren't constantly, they just let these teams play. There was a lot of physical and aggressive play, but both teams adjusted to it. And that's really where the Cowboys need to kind of get better at, right? Is in these games where these teams are just the refs are allowing these teams to play, the Cowboys need to take advantage of that and learn to play the style that the refs are dictating on the field a little bit better.
They also need Dak to run a little bit more and make
I think
plays
so too.
outside the pocket. That was
No.
Mahomes and Allen both rushed for 60, I think 8 yards in this game. They don't need Dak to do that. But if things aren't perfectly great in the pocket, get outside and move around. Maybe, with the next 9 months, he can get healthy, or the calf will be healthier, the ankle will be better. But that's an element of Dak's game they absolutely have to have back if they want him to get back to an elite level. All right, let's take one more quick break so I can tell you guys about Get Upside. Our listeners are making up to 25 cents for every single gallon of gas every time they fill up. Just download the free Get Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and use promo code Touchdown and get a bonus 25 cents per gallon on your first fill up. That's up to 50 cents cash back. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Get cash back using Get Upside. You can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or e-gift card. Just download the free Get Upside app and use promo code Touchdown to get up to 50 cents per gallon cash back on your first tank. That is promo code Touchdown. All right, last thing here. There was a little bit of a Ian Rappaport news dump on Sunday morning about Sean Payton, the Saints head coach, not necessarily committing to the 2022 season. He does have, I believe, an extra year left on his contract. And there were some rumors that, hey, maybe Dallas would be interested. Do you buy that?
I mean, I'd certainly buy that Dallas would be interested.
Yeah.
I would imagine, right? Look, I mean, this has been kind of almost an annual thing where Sean Payton has expressed interest in either retiring or may want to go to Dallas, or Dallas may be interested in them. And I'm sure he has made millions and millions of dollars leveraging the Cowboys' interest in him from the Saints owners. I mean, so kind of in that sense, I put a huge grain of salt into it. I will say this though, as everyone's been pointing this out, that this is something that happens all the time, and there's a reason why the leverage works. There's a reason. If this was all just smoke and mirrors, obviously it has been so far that because he hasn't left, but there's obviously a reason why the Saints ownership feels the need to cave when they hear this, is that they must somehow think that this is a legitimate thing. I mean, if you guys don't know, Peyton lives in a suburb of North Dallas. I mean, really just around a bunch of other Cowboys football players, to be honest. And has lived there for almost the entirety of his Saints career. So I think that there is some interest there. I think Peyton knows the Joneses and has a decent relationship with the Joneses. I know the Joneses obviously hold him in high regard. But I mean, let's be honest. We have been down this road 3 or 4 different times. Maybe this is the time when the stars are aligning the best. Maybe, I will accept that. That maybe this is the time where this actually could happen. This most likely to happen
because Drew Brees is gone. The Saints cap situation is not great.
Yeah. They're in a rough spot, and Peyton returning to who's playing quarterback, what's the situation. He's been holding that group together with duct tape and Dennis Allen for almost 2 or 3 years. Maybe he doesn't want to do that anymore. And for the Saints, maybe they're concerned that they're going to lose Dennis Allen in this coaching hiring merry-go-round. Yeah. He's already started to get some interviews. He's had experience being a head coach, which I don't think should be kind of held against him, considering the state of the franchise he was in at the time. I think that he's going to get some long looks as a guy that could potentially be a head coach candidate. And if for the Saints, they maybe they want to make sure that they lock in Dennis Allen as their next head coach, knowing that even if McVay came back next year, how many more years are they going to do this with him, and how much longer is that relationship going to hold
up? I also wouldn't be surprised if Sean Payton just wants a year off, right? Like, he's been a coach for a long time. Maybe he has a year off and he kind of reassesses where he's at next year. He's talked about how much
he's got to take a year off so they can create material for that Kevin James sequel, right? Like they got to make sure that he's got another year off for that.
Gosh.
It's crazy. Like I think he's got one more year, but do you think he would just take a year completely off of football, wait for that contract to be up, and then just see what free agency as a head coach is like?
Maybe. I mean, I could see him doing TV for a year, right?
That's what I was going to say is how much do you think like TV is playing into this? Because that was the element that kind of got added into it late that I thought was
So I saw a
interesting.
report, and I don't know how valid it is, but Amazon Prime has been making a big pitch for Aikman to steal
Yeah.
Aikman away from Fox, and Fox would look to grab Sean Payton to fill that role, and they could offer him, $15 million a year or whatever. Maybe that's enticing to Payton if he wants to take a year off and kind of go back and reset. Who knows? But let's talk about this really quickly for the Cowboys sets.
Yeah.
Do you think it's a big upgrade over McCarthy?
I personally do. I don't know why. I mean, I know there's people out there that are kind of feeling like this is a parallel move, but to me, I mean, what you see Peyton do with lesser than talent and the way he's able to, even when guys are hurt, when there's things going wrong, like his teams just win. Like they find ways to win in tough ways. He's creative as a coach. His teams are just always incredibly difficult to play.
Yep.
And he always knows exactly how to attack you and how to I mean, look at his team against half the teams that they beat this year had no business winning
They
those
beat the Bucs
games.
twice.
I mean, to me, yes, there's a huge difference between and I think the difference is what we've seen Peyton do without Drew Brees versus what have we seen McCarthy do without Aaron Rodgers, And so, to me, I think I would rather have Peyton just because I trust him to squeeze the juice out of everything, and to get the most out of it.
I also trust Peyton a lot when you have Dak as your quarterback. It feels like those two would fit and mesh really well, right?
Absolutely. A smart, heady quarterback the smart, heady quarterback.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why Brees and Peyton were such great fits, right? Is that having a smart, heady quarterback and a coach who knew how to take advantage of that. So, yeah, I think it would be a serious upgrade simply for the fact that, like, look, this is always going to be the problem with McCarthy, right? Is that, like, let's say even if you like what Kellen Moore is doing, if Kellen Moore gets a head coaching job, now Mike McCarthy's got to go find another offensive coordinator. Yep. You don't have to worry about that with Sean Payton because I want Sean Payton to be the person calling my offense, and I don't necessarily want Mike McCarthy to be the person.
I agree. What are the odds that we say this happens, that he becomes the Cowboys head coach this year? 5%? Less than 5%?
Yeah, I was going to say 10%, and I'm an optimist. So, yeah, I very small.
Get ready for Mike McCarthy and Doug Nussmeier as your head coach offensive coordinator pairing this year.
Probably.
We got plenty of time, though. Nothing has been decided for sure, Landon. We'll see how it all plays out over the next couple of weeks. Tomorrow, we're going to be back with some Twitter Tuesday. We're going to continue to get ready for the Senior Bowl, which I believe practices start. So next week, I believe practices start, which is absolutely crazy. So we'll start a little bit of our Senior Bowl preview. We'll start looking ahead to free agency. We've got the championship round this week. Busy time here for the Cowboys, even though they're not playing games. Landon, I know. All right, follow Landon at McCool BCB. I'm at Marcus _Mosher. We'll see you guys next time.